Sergeant Slaughter. Sarge, thank you so much for the time. And I know it's a difficult one, but I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
It's an honor to be on. This story has to be for this reason.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And man, when I think of those heroes and icons of that heyday of the golden era of pro wrestling in the 80s, I think of you, and I think of Hulk Hogan. And Hogan was a larger than life superstar. Obviously, you know that very well, going head to head with him at WrestleMania. But, you know, you had that feud with the Iron Sheik that led to the feud that Hogan had with the Iron Sheik and winning the WWF Championship. Just tell us about that period and that time in the WWF.
Well, first off, I knew Terry way earlier than that, and I saw a guy that really loved the business. He went through a lot to get to that point in the business, and he was there for a little while up in the WWF at that time, and then he did the movie with Sylvester Stallone, and I got a call one day in New Jersey. I was living there working for the WWF at that time, and it was Virginia. Wanted to know if I knew a guy named Terry Bolleo. He couldn't pronounce his last name. So I said, Terry Bolleo. He goes, yeah. He said, yeah, who is he? I said, that's Hulk Hogan. He said, Hulk who? And I said, Hulk Hogan. And he said, well, why should I bring him in? I said, he just did a movie with Sylvester Stallone, Rocky III. I'd bring him in tomorrow if you can. So he said, okay. And next thing I see Johnny Valiant advertising on the AWA of Hulk Hogan coming in. And unfortunately for Johnny, after about 7 or 8 weeks of promoting Hulk, Hulk came through the locker room up to the ring and got a standing ovation. So Johnny, see you later, alligator. And Hulk became one of the biggest stars in professional wrestling right there in the AWA before he even made his return back to the WWE. And yes, it was quite a return. We both kind of returned at the same time. He was going after the Iron Sheik, and I was going after the Iron Sheik because I declared war on the Iron Sheik. And in between, he had the match with the Iron Sheik and won the title. So there I was with a wrestler who did need a title and did have a title. And I said, let's go, boys. And of course, the WWE saw that same persona and put us both in separate shows each night in different cities. And we sold them all out. And it was an honor to be associated with the WWE at that point and be associated with professional wrestling because we were the hottest ticket going.
You know, Sarge, when I think of you, and at one point you were the biggest heel in the WWF, and then when Hogan first came to the WWF, he was a heel as well, and then both of you catapulting in two of the biggest babyface wrestlers that you could possibly have for that time period. Like, you know, was that really Vince McMahon Jr.'s idea to make you a babyface and to bring Hogan in as a babyface as well?
No, becoming a hero was my idea. I left the WWF at that time, went down to Charlotte. Mr. McMahon Sr. was still running the company. He said, Sarge, I want you to leave for a while. I said, did I do something wrong? He said, no, you're doing everything right. I don't want you to get overexposed. So he said, Charlotte's looking for a good villain. So I went down there and did very, very well, won the NWA United States Championship twice. And the first 3 hours, we used to do 3 hours on a Monday, 3 hours on a Tuesday, and then 3 weeks we would be off. Then come back for another 3 weeks. So the first night, I came back as a villain, and Mr. McMahon Sr. asked me to go out for dinner. So we went out somewhere in Allentown there. And he said, Sergeant, it's so good to have you back. You're the greatest villain of all time. And I said, well, Mr. McMahon, I appreciate that, but if you think I'm such a great villain, you ought to see me as a hero. And he went, what? Sergeant Slaughter's a hero? No way. What do you got in mind? And so he was all ears. And I told him, the Iron Sheik from Iran, he's here. And, we never really got a payback. Ayatollah Khomeini did. We never got to punch that son of a bitch in the nose. Why don't you let me, Sergeant Slaughter, declare war on the Iron Sheik and Iran, and the United States and Sergeant Slaughter will get some payback for all those things that they did over there. And I went through the whole thing, and I had him hypnotized, Mr. McMahon Sr. I had him hypnotized. And finally snapped out of me. He said, that's a great idea, Sergeant, but, it will only work for a few months. And then, and I looked behind him, and there's his son, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, giving me the thumbs up. And because he was taking over the company. So Mr. McMahon Sr. turned around and said, Vinny, don't you turn the sergeant into a hero. So off we went 3 weeks, and came back for TV the third week again. And I was the villain the first 2 hours. Third hour, I was off. Iron Sheik was the villain first hour. Second hour, he was off. Third hour, he's going to wrestle Eddie Gilbert. And here comes Vincent Kennedy. Sarge, you ready? We'd already done 2 hours. Sarge, you ready? I said, ready? I've been born ready, Vince. What do you got, man? He said, I want you to do what you told my father 3 weeks ago at the bar. I said, going against the Iron Sheik in Iran? He goes, yeah. I said, okay, when you want to do it? He goes, now. Right now. And I said, right now? He goes, right now. I'm not going to tell anybody. Only you and I and the truck's got to know because they got to play your music. Give me your best General Patton promo. I'll see you later. And off he went. And so I went out and challenged the Iron Sheik. And I think to answer your question, I declared war on him. And I went from being the greatest villain of all time to the most loved villain hero of all time in a matter of about 5 minutes. and so I think Mr. McMahon, Sr. and Jr., both had the idea, why not have two superheroes?
I get it.
I think that's when the ball started rolling, especially Vincent Kennedy, because he saw the future. He saw two towns in one night.
And Iron Sheik being that transitional champion to go to Bob Backlund, let's face it, wasn't the greatest promo in the world. Didn't have an explosion of charisma, great wrestler. And Hogan, obviously all about persona and character and charisma. Complete change from that era of the WWF to that new era of the WWF as well.
Yes, it was. And there you have two superheroes, and what more could you ask for? And of course, then it got to be really big. When Hasbro starts calling you and saying, hey, we'd like you to be our next first living G.I. Joe. We're going in a different direction. We want you to be our first living G.I. Joe. So there I was in between, what to do. And WrestleMania 1 is coming. And I heard rumor that it was supposed to be Hulk Hogan and I against Roddy Piper and Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff. So there I was, not knowing what to do. Should I stay for WrestleMania 1 or go to G.I. Joe? So my wife made the decision for me. She said, Bob, you can always be a wrestler. You can't always be the first living G.I. Joe. I said, that's why you get the big bucks, honey. So I called, gave him my notice, and then all of a sudden they only had one superstar.
Well, I mean, you missed WrestleMania 1, but you were back for WrestleMania 7, and you were back being heel. Talk about that transition period and talk about that match with Hogan and how big that match was with you and Hogan at WrestleMania 7.
Right. I got a call from Vince McMahon, and he said, Sarge, I got an idea. I see your contract with Hasbro is almost up. I said, funny you should know that. He said, that I need to know those things. So he said, I got an idea. WrestleMania 7, I want you and Hulk Hogan to sell it out for me at the LA Coliseum. I said, great. So I told my wife, guess where I'm going? Because we both lived in Connecticut. So I headed over to Vince McMahon's house on Monday morning. And he greets me, and we go into his house and to his library. He shows me a prototype of the LA Coliseum. He said, this holds 104,000 fans. and I want you and Hulk Hogan to sell it out and beat the record of Detroit of 93,000. And I said, sounds good to me. How are you going to make Hulk Hogan the villain? And he said, Hulk. What do you mean, Hulk? I said, yeah, I thought you were going to make Sergeant Slaughter, G.I. Joe, the real American hero. Is only you can do it, Vince. He goes, no, I got another idea. I want you to come back to the WWF and be pissed off at your country, at your military, because they were so weak, and let a small country like Iraq take over the Kuwait situation and take all the uranium, and you're pissed. You come back mean and nasty. And I went, it took you a little rough. He goes, well, if it's going to get too rough, you might not want to do it. I said, I'm in. Talking about rough, I'm in, but I got to do it all the way, because you take it all the way. So one day before this all happened, I'm on an airplane, and there next to me is Hulk Hogan. And he looks over to me. We never really talked much, And he said, I'm so glad you're back. He kind of talked like the side of his mouth, like we are supposed to know each other. I said, it's good to be back out of the side of my mouth. He said, I told Vince I wanted you back. He wanted WrestleMania 7 to be either the tugboat, the earthquake, or that Ultimate Warrior again. And I said, I'm not wrestling any of them. Bring Sergeant Slaughter back and I'll do it. So that's kind of how it all happened. Hulk asked for Vince to bring me in as the villain. So gotta thank him. I always called Terry my golden goose, because every time we wrestled, I made more money.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people say that, and like when it comes to Hogan, and you mentioned it before, him being a part of Rocky III and him being in that movie, which for that year was the biggest blockbuster hit. Yeah. How could you not want to take advantage of that and not want to be a part of it? And Vince McMahon did. It seemed like it's so weird because Vern Gagne didn't. They never pulled the trigger on Vern Gagne beating Nick Bockwinkel. Right. And just time and time again, it would end in a disqualification or would end in a count out. And I just wonder if things would have been different, if the history would have been different if Vern Gagne would have put that AWA championship on Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, well, he did. And for a few moments. And, he beat Nick Bockwinkel, but then they said there was a technicality, and they took the title off, and that killed the whole territory. That was the start of the end for the AWA right there. They had to fight tooth and nail from that point on, because you know where Terry Bollea went after that? New York City. Yeah. And never stopped. Incredible Hulk Hogan. I mean, what he did, the immortal guy, he said, I don't know if he followed our path, but he said, how can I be the meanest son of a gun in professional wrestling and fool him, just like Vince McMahon did with Sergeant Slaughter, the Iron Sheik? Element of surprise, and that's what he did. We all learned from the WWF, especially Vince McMahon, Senior and Junior, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, in case you're listening, Vince. Sorry to say it, Junior. But they were just so incredibly genius of the entertainment business, and they took it to levels that nobody ever look at it right now. I mean, you turn it on, no matter where they are, it's sold out. You watch some of these other TVs, and all the seating is blacked out. I mean, it's dark, and but they have the lights way up high when you do a WWE event, and no matter if it's a TV or an arena or a pay-per-view, they're doing it. And I can't say that I agree with the style these days. I don't know if I could be in it, or Hulk and I could be in the business now, but because there's a lot of memorization and a lot of locker room matches, which we never did. Everything was ad-lib. God rest his soul. Terry Bollea, Hulk Hogan, the immortal Hulk Hogan. He took the rope. He went for that brass ring and didn't let anything stop him.